and welcome to episode 62 of China Tools, a series of videos where we put woodworking tools from China to the test. My name is Dennis and I am hooked on wood. And today I'm excited to showcase a few new products I've designed in collaboration with Hongdui. And I think you will love them. And when you work with a tracksaw, this video will particularly interest you because after designing our new bench dogs, we ask ourselves if we could improve or develop additional accessories for an MFT style workbench. And in this video we will show you 3 products that will make working with your tracksaw on your workbench more practical, accurate and straightforward. And for those who follow my channel know I introduced these amazing bench dogs in episode 60. And although they might look the same as others, they are designed from the ground up and offer features that others cannot match. And although the reviews are excellent, I've read some stories that suggest that they may not fit nicely. So in this video I will share some tips that can solve this problem. And in the same episode where I featured these bench dogs, I also showcased these fence dogs. And a viewer commented that if you cannot tighten it while it's attached to a fence, they are pretty much useless. And while I don't see it as strictly black and white, he did make a valid point. With most of these fence dogs that can expand in your dog hole, you have to tighten them first and then add the fence. And not only does this take extra setup time, but especially when you use a fence with a scale, you have to go through the process of setting it accurately every time. And therefore the ideal fence dog should address this problem. And as we developed our fence dog, the first fence dog that resolved this issue entered the market. And fortunately our approach is entirely different, and I believe it sets our fence dogs apart. And although it's by far the most advanced option currently available, it remains the most affordable. So let's see why we design it this way. And when you carefully set up your fence for accurate cuts, it would be great if you could add and remove your fence without having to go through this process again. And while this is possible with normal fence dogs, you cannot secure them in your dog holes. Expanding bench dogs or fence dogs center themselves in the dog holes, creating the most accurate connection. And it is crucial that the connection to the fence is secure and sturdy. And while we tested this during our development period, we soon realized that a one-point connection would be too vulnerable. And therefore, to make it as secure as possible, it required at least 2 points of contact. And additionally, we added a rubber strip to create an even more secure fit. And in our opinion, this makes the most sturdy and secure connection. Momotion sponsored this video, and besides woodworking, I love my garden, which is also very organized and clean. And Momotion is a real game-changing robot mower with technology that sets new standards. It's incredibly easy to use. Simply place it in your garden and let it create a map automatically or manually as I do here. And that's it. There's no need for perimeter wiring or separate antenna stations. Thanks to its advanced eye vision technology, which combines satellite data with its camera system and a 4G network, it achieves an accuracy of just 2 centimeters. It's truly remarkable. It effortlessly runs through my gravel path and neatly trims the edges, and again, all without wiring. And instead of leaving a random pattern, it operates very efficiently in straight lines. And I could talk about this remarkable mower for hours. It's truly impressive, and I can highly recommend it. But for now, let's go back to woodworking. And I've included a link in the video's description if you want more information about this machine. And when this accurate repeatable setup is less critical, because you do not have a fence with a scale, you can remove the second screw, of course, for a more straightforward setup. And it would have been simpler to address these points at the side of the bench dog. This way we could have just made an opening and utilized existing parts, making it more cost effective. However, the problem is that there's no space when you want to use these stop collars to lift your rail, or even to use your rail clips. So you cannot use the same line of holes as the fence, which limits your saw capacity. And by moving the fence just a bit further forward, we created enough space to use the same line of holes. And although I am a big fan of dog holes, I prefer not to add as many as possible. For me, using anything other than the same line of holes in such a setup is a compromise. And in the end, I believe we have created the perfect fence dog, which offers the most secure setup and results in the best accuracy. And it is also very practical and looks amazing. And while $60 for a set of two is slightly higher than we initially hoped, it remains the most affordable option of its kind and is undoubtedly the most advanced. And this is my scoring card. The next product is this repeatable sliding stop. And I've already shown you some shots of how I use it in a tracksaw setup, but that's just one thing you can do with it. When you have an MFT style workbench, a stop that allows you to set it at any given point is a very convenient accessory. And I have this one from UK and use it frequently, but I always thought that I had some limitations that kept me from using it more. And this is my interpretation of a repeatable sliding stop, which I believe is much more useful. And I must say that this is the last pre-production version with a red scale, but in the final version it will be black for better readability and because I just prefer the look of it in black. And because I have more workbenches, I prefer not to place more holes than necessary for my central workbench, which means I have a bigger distance between the holes. However, even with a full MFT table, the holes are almost 10 centimeters apart. So this tool's basic function is to create a stop between these dog holes. And we made it long enough so even in the 45-degree position you have enough reach. And this tool can be used in many situations. And it's one of those items that you only appreciate once you have it and then wonder why you didn't buy it sooner. And we designed it to be as versatile as possible, making it useful in a wide range of scenarios. And if I had to set up my workbench for repeatable work, with my domino for example, it can look something like this. And because the dog holes are only in a fixed position, it needs a sliding stop to create the flexibility to set it at any position I want. And what made it a bit more complex was my desire to integrate a scale that allows you to set it to 0 at any given point. So if I want to assemble two pieces of wood 2 centimeters outside of the edge, now it's just a matter of setting the 0 and sliding it to 2 centimeters and you can quickly set up your workpieces. And you can position the scale in either direction. And we designed it to ensure accurate reading with 0 parallax effect and to allow for smoother sliding on one side while keeping it secure in place on the other. We incorporated a magnet strip into both the ruler and the bar. And this ensures it remains fixed after being set. And to make it as usable as possible, I wanted it to work for cutting smaller strips on your tracksaw. And if you have a tracksaw setup with a fence with a scale, you can only use it for wider dimensions than the rail. For smaller strips, you will need to find an alternative solution. So we made this sliding stop long enough to reach the guide rail in a setup like this. And if you look closely at the scale, you will see that it starts at -1 centimeters. And this is to correct the curve of the blade. So if my blade is 1.8 millimeters, I correct this at my scale. And now I can set it to the desired size for cutting. And of course, for even more accurate settings, using something that compensates the curve of the blade is even better. However, when you need to compensate multiples of millimeters, you can set it with great accuracy. And I must say that this only works for strips up to 60 centimeters wide. So there's still a gap of about 4 centimeters where you need another solution. But otherwise I had to make this device too long, which would become impractical in other situations. In the end, I think we made a repeatable stop more useful in practice by adding this scale, which allows you to set to 0 at any position. And it works great with your tracksaw, although that is not even its primary function. It is priced at $67, which I cannot say is a bargain. But because we have improved the usability so much more, I still think it is a great tool to have in your workshop. And this is my scoring card. And the last product I want to show you is this guide rail connector. And I must say that I was somewhat involved with this product. And with the first version they sent me, it was clear they wanted to create the best guide rail connector. And following that philosophy, they made numerous changes, and as a result, it became increasingly complex to build. The connector is primarily made from aluminum for better durability. It fits perfectly around the bench dog, creating a strong and solid connection. To enable usage on both sides of the bench dog, a hinge point has been added. And to eliminate any place caused by the bar within the rail, 2 adjustable spring screws are included to achieve a precise fit. And the result is perhaps an over-engineered guide rail connector, but probably the best you can get. When you have a perfectly aligned grid of dog holes with these expanding bench dogs, expanding fence dogs, and these guide rail connectors, you eliminate many variables that can cause an uneven cut. But to be honest, there isn't much wrong with the standard guide rail connectors. Yes, the connectors may lose their strength over time, leading to some play, but despite this, they are affordable and can be added and removed quickly. And this is especially useful when you need to position or retrieve your workpieces. And at $45 for a set, you have to pay a premium price tag for all this engineering. And although it's pretty clear why they are more expensive, I struggle to determine if in practice it is worth the extra money. These connectors are very sturdy, and while working with them, it became very natural to simply fold the rail guide away to access your workpiece. And this is such a convenient solution that you wonder why nobody has thought of it before. When you fold it away, it creates a gap large enough to get your workpieces and add a new one comfortably. And this feature alone would justify the extra cost for me. However, although you can fold your rail guide away, they are not designed with this feature in mind. And as a result, this does not always work flawlessly, creating tension on the connector. And you need to take some extra care to align both connectors at the same height. So although it works with some care, I cannot recommend buying them specifically for this function. And that brings me to a point where I'd like to know your opinion. Do you think it would be interesting to specifically design a guide rail connector that can fold the rail guide away? Or am I the only one who thinks this could be a great solution? I'm really looking forward to your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. So in the end, as I mentioned earlier, I cannot recommend buying this for the folding function, although I see potential in it with some modifications. So what is left is a very sturdy, nicely engineered product. But for $45, in practice, I do not think there's that much of a difference to justify this price. And this is my scoring card. In episode 60, I showed you our version of a bench dog. And while the reviews are excellent, some wrote that the fit in the dog holes was not that smooth. So I want to share some tips that can resolve this problem. And because you go deeper inside your workbench and you have 3 rings, there is more friction. But it does not mean it will be difficult to add and remove them. In fact, they should work pretty straightforward. And our designs allow us to separate the base from the top end. And there's a screw on the top of the base that holds it together. And it is possible that this is tightened too much, causing the rings to already expanding. There's also something that prevents this from happening, but by releasing it half a turn can make the difference. And my workbench top consists of 2 layers of 80mm MDF and plywood. And it is with these thicker workbench tops that you really benefit from this 3-ring design. But when your workbench top is below 20mm, the 3rd ring is not beneficial, so you can also remove it. And this will generate less friction. And the base will be a bit loose when you do so, but as soon as you're at the top, this play will disappear. And the last thing I want to mention is that because of humidity, dirt or glue drops, the dog holes can become smaller. And that is why a reamer is an essential tool when you have an MFT style workbench. I do not have any problems with these bench dogs, and they also fit perfectly on my UJK workbench top. And the last thing is that in my experience, these expanding bench dogs become to work smoother over time. When the rubber rings are fresh, they do not slide as easily inside than when there is some dirt on them. So I hope these suggestions will make your experience more pleasant. Well, that is the end of this video. I hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments. And I want to tell you that I like being involved with the development of woodworking products or even designing them myself. So if you have any ideas, just let me know. Who knows, we can create awesome products that make our hobby even more attractive. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and well, we see each other next time.